So we have a bunch of realtors that are in this room, and they're obviously here to learn for other people, but they're also here to learn for themselves. So if you're a realtor and you want to contribute your commission to the deal, how does that normally work? And obviously, are they going to be on the GP or the LP side most likely? And how have you most often seen deals structured with that? They're not necessarily the person who found the deal.
So like they're the listing agent on it?
They might be. They would be. Well, they would have to be the person who found that brought the deal, the buyer, the.
Oh, they like just found it, like say off market, and you're like, Drew, you should buy this, and then they get in on it.
Yeah, but they're not necessarily the principal syndicators, but they find it and say, hey, I'd like to be in on this deal.
Yeah, I would say like carve out a piece of the general partnership. If you found the deal, I'll happily give you GP if we close, but it has to be like, I'm very transparent of like, people forward me emails that are listed. I'm like, no, I've seen that. I'm like, I've talked to Brian several times about this. Like, right. So it just, if it's truly off market, and I'm very transparent with it, but you can get a little cut of the general partnership, and then they can just kind of be part of it. But one thing as a capital raiser, if you deem yourself a capital raiser, you can't get paid on the amount of money you raise, so it's usually predetermined on the front end. So that's why I say if you can raise $1 million, just cut it down in half or even less, so you can get the experience and just get the first at bat. And you have to have a recurring role. So investor webinars, investor updates. Hey, I'm presenting the numbers, so that's like one thing I want to make sure everyone walks away with.
As a GP?
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, if you're on the GP, you have to have a recurring. Like if you find the deal, you should check in, care, do the investor webinar, even if it's for a little bit, just to make sure that you have a substantive role in the deal as well.
Talk about capital calls.
Not fun. So capital, I haven't.
What is one?
There are. I mean, I've talked to a lender who's been in the industry, and he's like, "Yeah, I invest in syndications." And so, capital call is when you initially go into a deal, and you're like, hey, "We're going to raise $1 million, and we're going to, everything's going to be great. We're going to high five, make a lot of money, and we're out of here, right?" But sometimes shit happens and you run out of money, and so you have to go back to your investors like, hey, we need more capital call, and it's a very tough conversation. So that's why it's like the reputation component is super huge, and that's why it's like we were joking about like people being broke, but like partner with people who've done this before a lot. Like I partnered on my 36 unit with someone, and he's like, you didn't even need me to partner. I'm like, absolutely, I would give him equity on every deal just because he's helped me get to where I am today. And so it's just like the assurance and peace of mind of having the contacts and that person on my team is like super helpful. So, because the last thing I want to do is ruin my reputation of like, oops, we missed. And now I have to ask investors for more money. It hurts their experience. They're upset. They're at conferences telling Drew, don't invest with Mike. It's a huge trickle down, and it's just no one. So it's just really important to get your numbers right. Overestimate your numbers, because then worst case you're well capitalized in the face of a recession. That's not the worst place to be in.
Yeah. Tell me.
What can you do to avoid capital calls? How do you actively mitigate that?
Overestimate everything. I'm like with my underwriting, I assume my taxes change day one, even though in Tennessee it's every 4 years. So I assume like we sell the property, this is the highest the tax will be. So the first 4 years the expenses are inflated. Overraise on the capex. So for example, we were for our 36 unit, we're assuming $6,000 a door. We just said 8. It all worked out, and we've renovated 17 of them of the 36. So and we still have over 100,000+ in capex. So I don't like bridge, but also making sure you're not over leveraged right now, because just right now debt is so expensive in terms of interest rate. Your cash flow just goes away because your rate's now like 6% today. So
when you guys are running your numbers nowadays, what are the basis points you're expecting to increase in each year? Are you guys still going off 10 basis points, or are you going up?
it is. So I would recommend listening to Nikolai Ray. He's based in Canada, but the going in cap rate doesn't matter as much in terms of like if I buy it at a 5.5 cap on actuals, what happens is like taxes go up, insurance goes up. I'm going to increase rent. So I look at market cap rate and try to go like 10 basis points from there, because I shouldn't be penalized for getting a discount by buying at a higher cap rate. And then like if in Denver, we bought at a 4.8 cap, market cap rate's 4.2. So we got a discount. So we could sell it the next day for a 4.2 cap. So it's just important that I stress test though. I go like really high, really low, and I just I find like the worst case scenario where I'm like, okay, if I sold it for the same thing I bought it for, or even less, and then I look at like, okay, where do I think it'll sell, and just can I get comfortable with that range? So I hope that was helpful.
Yeah.
It's all crystal ball anyways. It's like asking, what do you think interest rates are going to be 2 years from now?
Meant, like with this time period in particular, what you see in the next, 3 years, 5 years, how you guys say you're buying at market cap.
Yeah.
What you guys are expecting to see.
I'd say like at least 1% up, or 2, just in case. It kind of depends where too. Like downtown Nashville is very different than Columbia a year ago, and even Columbia a year ago versus today. So it's such a moving target. But as long as you make sure and you're underwriting that you look as an LP or even raising, your cap rate should go up because on the exit. Because if it goes down, what you're pretty much telling investors is, hey, it's such a good market that no matter what happens, we're going to make money. And that's not okay. So just make sure your cap rate at the beginning goes up compared to the exit. Because the property gets older and rents are more ambiguous. So
Yeah, I was hoping you had
I
the
value
crystal
money.
ball that you were gonna say, here's what's gonna be happening in 3 years.
I can do many
from
things.
now.
Magic is
But
not one
yeah,
of them.
Yeah. Did you have a question? No? Oh,
She's just
okay.
laughing.
Okay. All right.
He's funny.
Okay, this might be a terrible question, but if you're that conservative on the front end, how do you give a 15 to 20% IRR?
By calling Brian a lot. I mean, I just try to network a lot. So like this year I've done more deals than I've done the last 2 years combined. And it's literally my thing is I call brokers every 3 weeks. Hey Brian, just want to check in on deals, and because of that, like I've gotten 190 unit off market, and I'm not going direct to seller because I don't have time for that. I had a 12 unit. Literally, I dropped everything I did, went to Clarksville for a 12 unit, and then called them like, yep, we're submitting full price, no questions, let's go. And even then, both of those deals like fell out just because of sellers are finicky right now. But I just call brokers every 3 weeks, and I'm just like, hey, what's going on in the market? What can we take a look at? And I just know every deal that's on market and meet with them, coffee. So I rely 100% on brokers to give me opportunities so that I can be on Brian's board one day.
He's on there too, yeah. So, but,
Might be spelled wrong, but
yeah, maybe spelled wrong, but he's on there. But I shortened it to Mikey T, so from there. But
Yeah.
but no, what he said is exactly, I mean, he calls me every couple of weeks, right? So,
because Brian,
The right deal.
so yeah.
yeah, because like my buy box is literally 10 plus units and a household median income at the track level of 40,000 or more, and 1970s or newer. And then after that, it's more of, can I make 5 to 8% on average? Well, probably 5 to 7% on average cash on cash. And that's with like a worst case. So that's just kind of where I'm targeting. So if Drew wants 8, I'll overpay to get the deal and make 5 to 7, but I know operationally I may tweak a few things and get there. So it's all a matter of kind of who's willing to buy what when.
Mike, you said your buy box was 40K median income, and what was the other 2 criteria?
1970s or newer and 10 plus units. So Clarksville down to Huntsville, debating to be in the Carolinas, and then I'm in Denver because a group that already had 200 units reached out to me when I was leaving my job and was like, do you want to partner with us? I'm like, okay. And
Twist my arm.
well, it helps when they have 200 units, and literally it's they have over 200 units in Austin, Texas, they don't have that. I think they have 50 in Los Angeles, and then 200 in Denver. And the key principal is the writer of Family Guy. So that helps.
Do you have a question,
I
Jen?
do. So with cap rates compressing and multifamily, even with financing, with interest rates being at what they are, operational excellence is becoming the only way to truly do value add. In addition, obviously you can force rents and have rent appreciation. Can you talk about operational excellence and what, as an asset manager, do you have anything to do with that? And what are the most common things that you try to target as an asset manager?
Yeah, there's 3 numbers I look at religiously, and I think a lot of people overcomplicate asset management. It's physical occupancy, economic occupancy, and cash in the bank. So physical occupancy is first. If I'm not at 95% physically occupied, we're not doing something right. Is our marketing, can people find the place? Are people renting? The property manager will try to be like, hey, our rents are too high. I can very quickly point out where our comps are and where we need to be and where we are in the market. So I'm generally looking how many clicks does it take for me to apply and or see a unit, and just having that marketability. I don't think you need apartments.com. Facebook Marketplace is like very free. In Denver, Zillow.com works a lot. So once we're filled, the next risk is economic occupancy. So it's how many people are paying rents. So if my property manager doesn't know who's paying or why, if they're not on rental assistance, that's the problem. So we're just going in to make sure, do we need to file evictions? Do we have payment plans? Do we have rental assistance? What can we do to get that collected? And if the first 2 numbers are good and you're getting paid, the only other risk is you're overspending. So it's looking at the numbers and seeing, is our renovations too high? I look at utilities. If you're over $1,000 in utilities per unit, you have leaks everywhere. The highest I've seen is like $1,400. And then the operator who bought the property goes, could you believe there's leaks? I'm like, I'm not a plumber, but I could have told you that. Like, it was bad. But that's a 1960s product, so I don't do that.
Hence the 1970 Never.
So those are the 3 things. Because I know for my 36 unit, we should have cash in the bank of 120 grand or higher, and that's when we can pay out investors. So, yeah. I know my numbers, I think.
Yeah. Tommy, you got another question? I know you do.
I didn't, but I will.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, what's your day look like? Do you call all your brokers on the same day, or how do you pack
Since
it?
I quit my job, I don't have a routine yet, so I'm working on it. But next week will be harder because I'm going to Germany. So, but yeah, I just call. I mean, I try to underwrite in the morning because that's just mentally, it's like I can dial that in. But I haven't. I've since our underwriting, I've been taking a page out of Brandon's and underwriting less. Kind of the back of the napkin I've been doing is like the cost per unit, like how much does it cost to buy, plus the renovation, does that hit the 1% rule? That's kind of the quicker way, and I think, so Brian helped me learn to underwrite less.
Yeah. So how many properties do you underwrite a day?
Hopefully. I've been doing a terrible job.
Okay.
I'm trying to hire an analyst.
Before. Let's put it that way.
When I was a broke syndicator, 2 to 4
A day.
a day.
And it wasn't back of the napkin either. So, like say, he
Huns-
has pretty elaborate spreadsheets of how he does his underwriting.
It's intensive.
Which is very, and there's, 20 tabs along the
Takes an
bottom
hour.
of it. Yeah. So,
Takes an hour.
yeah, it takes an hour for him. It'd take a week for me to do one.
If you want to
And
get
he
good at
does how
Excel,
many
get rid of your MacBook, buy a PC, and don't use the mouse. You'll be much quicker.
Yeah. So,
I was gonna ask about the 1% rule. Could you break that down a little bit more?
Yeah. So the purchase price by unit plus the renovations per unit times 1%. That's where your market rent should be. Because the thought on that is, if I buy it and renovate it, what can I get for market rents? And for renovations, usually I've seen 10 to 12 grand on interiors now. It used to be 10, but inflation and everything. But if there's anything, like if you're buying 2000s build, like early 2000s, you're going to need a roof, so that number's going to go higher. If you're buying 1960s, hey, you're going to invest in the plumbing. So it's just a lot of factors when it comes to the age of the property.
So that's your pro forma rents we're talking about for the 1%.
Yeah.
You're not doing that in place.
No. We wouldn't have bought the 36 unit if that was the case.
Yeah.
Because that was 775. So
So you talked about creating a CRM for raising capital, for putting people in there. So, you know, and again, we talked about kind of a list of maybe questions that you ask, so forth. Do you and I'm sure it depends on which property, do you have a certain minimum that when you were syndicating that you were
I shoot
looking
for
to get from people?
Yeah, I shoot for like $100,000 minimum. Obviously, it's circumstantial, and it's like if you build a good rapport with someone, it's like okay, we can get you in for 50. Like so I meet with my like accountability group once a week, and they're like, hey, we'll pool money and get $35,000. I'm like, okay, that's fine. Like, but it all depends on like just the rapport, how well you communicate. Because the last thing I want to do is like to the investors who like that 36 unit, they're like, I'm going to put 150. 5 days before close, they said $75,000, and I've had people totally back out. I'm like, similar to brokers, I don't endorse those investors, and I tell a lot of people, respectfully. But I don't want my friends and operators in the space to go through what I had to. So it's just, I don't know. I have a really good like memory with people, and just like this is what they want. So it's like if I got the 12 units, like, hey, I may have a JV coming. How are things looking? He's like, perfect, because I'm still working super late in California. So it's like, I like to think I'm personable and remember what people want. And so it's just, you know what buckets to put people, like JVs, flips, 10-year holds.
What, how large would you like to get your CRM with as far as your database of people that you could draw on?
If I could raise like, so I think my Denver deal, I raised $600,000 while moving and training my replacement without movers and maintaining my CPA license. I think I contacted 75 people and raised $600,000. And I was just like, when you're raising, it's literally frantically just like, who do I need to talk to tomorrow to raise this money? I think I called 17 people on a Saturday.
Oh, she got a question now. Okay.
Yeah, what do you
just
say?
Well, it's harder. Okay, so the ideal way is to have
you're
a
the one of
weapon.
the few that he hasn't called yet. I'm
No.
just kidding.
Well, no. So generally, when you're calling the investors, you don't have the leverage of like, "Hey, you're coming to the webinar to see me." I'm calling you, going, "Can I have your money?" But no, I generally like. I know like it's like, "Hey, you expressed interest in investing. I may have this deal in Denver," and give them highlights. It's 61 units, 41 are fully renovated. The 41 unit was literally floating rate, and so they had to sell, and they finished the renovations. But you give them like a elevator pitch and like the business plan. Rents are here. We're gonna go here. Worst case, and I always tell the worst case because everyone sells the upside. Worst case, no refi or anything. We're averaging 5% cash on cash, and also this is the last year of 100% bonus depreciation. So I'm talking to like real estate agents, salespeople who have like made a lot, and now they're like, oh shit, tax time's coming. So because there's this thing called cost segregation, and it's an accounting and engineering study, and they take the depreciation put in the first couple of years. So on our 36 units, we raised 1.4 million. The first year we wrote off $1 million because of that study. So it's like, hey, I will give you more depreciation if we get this deal closed, and I get more equity.
So that leads me to